The following video will be me listing off a lot of negatives in regards to the Nintendo Switch. So to some, it might sound like I'm hating. However, this is just passion. I played my Nintendo Switch for literally thousands of hours, and I can assure you, I do not hate Nintendo or the Switch. If anything, this is tough love for Nintendo and a reflection of how they handled the system and the games that came with it. That being said, let's go over some of the positives. The Nintendo Switch is a major success for Nintendo and in general. It's the third highest selling console of all time. And during an era where Nintendo consoles were perceived as the laughingstock of the gaming industry.
Any chance Black Ops 4 is coming to Switch?
I just make the shoes.
Completely surpassed 2 generations of competition. Some of the best games of this generation landed on the Nintendo Switch, which also introduced a major innovation to the gaming market. That is hybrid gaming. You can now play both docked and handheld mode, meaning you can play both on the big screen, like a PlayStation or Xbox, and on the go, like a DS or a tablet. We have to start at the Nintendo Wii. So in late 2006, Nintendo launched the Wii. Like the Switch, it was innovative and successful. Everyone and their mom had a Wii. I had one, you probably had one, or someone you know had/has one. Your auntie, your grandma, everybody had one. Also, like the Switch, it introduced very successful and classic Nintendo games, such as Mario Kart Wii, Wii Sports and Wii Sports Resort, Mario Galaxy, New Super Mario Bros. Wii, Skyward Sword, and the list just goes on. At the end of its life cycle, the Wii sold a total of over 100 million units. Seeing an opportunity to follow the massive success of the Wii, Nintendo sought to make the Wii U in 2012, which was innovative, but did not see the success that the Wii did, to say the least. Even though a lot of my childhood was spent on the Wii U, and I still play it every now and then, I have to admit it was not the best console. The marketing was ass. The third-party games did not utilize the gamepad correctly, with the added bonus of major third-party developers skipping out on the Wii U. The Wii U failed in the standards of success for a video game console. Nintendo executives took pay cuts due to a lack of revenue and profits. Shigeru Miyamoto and some board members took a 30% pay cut, while then president of Nintendo, Satoru Iwata, took a 50% pay cut. By the end of its life cycle, the Wii U sold 13 million units, almost 90% less than the Wii. Here's where my story comes into play. It didn't help that during that time, the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4 emerged and dominated the market. If you want to play Call of Duty, for instance, you had to play on either the Xbox or the PlayStation, while I was stuck playing Minecraft, Mario, and Black Ops 2 on the Wii U, which had no DLC or any updates, by the way. My friends would be playing Black Ops 3, Battlefield, Halo, and don't forget about GTA 5. So one morning before school, I open my phone and scroll on YouTube. It's October of 2016, and the first video that comes up is a video titled First Look at Nintendo Switch, or something like that. They privated the video for marketing purposes. I distinctly remember continuing to rewatch the video, being amazed at the games that were being shown and the hybrid functionality. In January of 2017, I stayed up way past my bedtime, and for the record, I had to get up at 5 in the morning to catch my school bus, so staying up was usually a death wish, which is what I mean by bedtime, not my parent making me go to bed at the age of 14. You got me fucked up. Just to watch the Nintendo Switch presentation. They showed off the functionality of the Nintendo Switch, some games that will be released, the release date, the price, and then my video buffered. And then I got mad and threw my phone because it wouldn't play no matter what I did. But I was still hyped, the most hyped I had been for a console's release. And this brings us to the year of 2017. March 3rd, 2017 was when the Nintendo Switch finally launched. March 10th, 2017 was the day I got mine. It was a super exciting time having access to Nintendo's new and improved console, being able to flex to all my friends and hold Nintendo's name in high regard, as I was the first in my social sphere to actually own a Switch. During this time, however, I only had one game, and that was Fast RMX. The Switch launched with 10 titles, the majority of which were retail, and my copy of Breath of the Wild hadn't shipped yet. In just a couple of weeks, however, I started my journey in what's probably my current favorite game and my pick for the best video game of our generation. Breath of the Wild. I would play Breath of the Wild somewhat consistently for over 6 years, all the way until its sequel dropped. As I just stated, Breath of the Wild is my favorite game, and in my opinion, the best game of our generation. That's right, better than GTA 5, better than The Witcher 3, better than Red Dead Redemption 2, and whatever other game you're probably thinking of. I mean, its presentation is just unmatched. How you're thrown into the world and how you can interact with it is something that still gives me the chills. The systems in the game, such as weapon durability, climate, gathering materials to make meals and elixirs, the rune abilities, the shrines, the sound effects. This was honestly the shakeup that the Zelda franchise needed, and not only did it make Zelda an open world title, it made it one of the most free open world titles ever. How many games let you do literally whatever you wanted right after the tutorial? You could fight the final boss if you wanted to. The game does have its shortcomings, like the story, for instance, and a lot of things would get old after years of playing, of course. For instance, the lack of enemy variety became noticeable after a couple of years. The shrines and boss fights and such, but honestly, the pros heavily outweigh the cons. This is the only game I've replayed over 10 times from finish to start because it was just that damn good and replayable. And all of my friends who I've made play this game have nothing bad to say about it. They all literally became hooked. By June, I was playing Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, which ended up being the highest selling Nintendo Switch game. It was fun being able to play with 2 items on the Switch, but mind you, I had bought the DLC for Mario Kart 8 on the Wii U, so aside from the battle mode, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe wasn't giving me much of anything I hadn't already experienced. July changed everything for me, and that was due to the release of Splatoon 2. As a decent Splatoon 1 player, I definitely had a high affinity for Splatoon 2, purchasing it on day one. Now the competitive community will disagree, but Splatoon 2 is a much better game than Splatoon 1. And we saw this firsthand. On a technical and visual level, Splatoon 2 ran better, the ranking system was better as far as going from C to S+, then you had a better story mode, and then Salmon Run. At this point in time, I was still heavily playing Black Ops 2 for the Wii U as well as Splatoon 1, so Splatoon 2 was a very nice change of pace. However, I did not take it as seriously as I later would, and I got to B rank if I remember correctly before giving it a rest. In October of 2017, Super Mario Odyssey dropped. This was on a Friday, and I got the physical copy of the game on the following Saturday, and beat it by the end of the day. Now, a lot of people beat the story of this game quickly, and that was one of the big criticisms of the game at the time. However, there's a lot of content in this game. I actually didn't get around to beating the Dark Side of the Moon until 2021, which was the second to last challenge in the game. Mario Odyssey is, in my opinion, one of the best 3D Mario games ever, and is a beautiful modern iteration of one. The movement in the game actually makes for a high skill ceiling, and the different worlds were fun to explore and hold amounts of power moons you wouldn't even think possible. And then you have the whole turning into different enemies and NPCs gimmick, all with different mechanics that are super cool. Oh yeah, and grinding for the different outfits was hella fun and memorable. Overall, not as good as Breath of the Wild, nor as replayable, but Odyssey is a 10 out of 10 game for what it is. So overall, 2017 was a very good year for the Switch. It started off slow, but 2017 saw the release of some of the highest selling and quintessential Switch games. Some that I didn't even mention were ARMS, Xenoblade Chronicles 2, Mario & Rabbids Kingdom Battle, Fire Emblem's Warriors, 1-2 Switch, and more. Breath of the Wild received Game of the Year for 2017, while Breath of the Wild and Mario Odyssey were nominees, meaning 2 first-party Nintendo games that came out that year were nominated for Game of the Year. That's how good those games were. But the Switch wasn't the only major console I got in 2017. My Christmas was pretty stacked that year, after receiving a new laptop, a PS4, and 3 new Call of Duty games. Needless to say, the Switch wasn't the only console that was going to occupy my time. At this point in the video, you may be wondering, I thought you said it was going to sound like you hated Nintendo. And yes, it will, but I need you to understand what Nintendo had going for them, when it worked and when it started not to, and when it became inexcusable. By early 2018, there was this little game called Fortnite, which was taking the world by storm. no pun intended. By season 2 of the game, I was playing here and there as a break from Call of Duty, especially since my Black Ops 2 Wii U skills weren't translating into Black Ops 3, Infinite Warfare, and World War II. I mean, I was decent, just not as dominant as I wanted to be. Anyways, I made a, by my standards, successful video on Fortnite coming to the Nintendo Switch.
Today I just wanted to simply address if Fortnite will or will not be coming out for the Nintendo Switch.
By season 4 of Fortnite, a Switch port was announced and I was hyped. I actually, for the record, was one of the first people to upload a Fortnite on Switch Victory Royale to YouTube, which made for another, in my standards, successful video. I was definitely within the first 5 people, but anyways, Fortnite on the Nintendo Switch would be the first game which showed the limitations of the Nintendo Switch. I didn't really care at the time about these issues because Fortnite back then was a lot less visually demanding as it is now, but there were some noticeable differences from Fortnite on the Switch from Fortnite on the PS4. The health and shield bars for some reason were more rectangular, but trust, that is the least of your problems. The audio was horrific and the textures did not load in until 2 minutes of being on the ground.
Well, let's take Fortnite Switch for example. It is 1 gigabyte, while on everyone else's systems it's 13 gigabytes at least at this point, but it's 1 gigabyte on the Switch. Runs at an average of 15 frames per second.
And cuz, don't even get me started on the input delay and the sub 30 frames per second. It literally made me feel like my Switch Pro controller was creaking when I played on it. But I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't worried about any of that shit for a while. Ever since Fortnite came out, I wanted it to be on the Nintendo Switch. I thought it would be the perfect game for it, and lo and behold, it actually happened. By September though, I was not really feeling the Switch. First off, Fortnite was in season 5 and it was basically unplayable for me, especially with PlayStation now being able to cross-play with Xbox. I, for lack of a better term, had no reason to play the Switch. Fortnite was the main game I was playing now, and I did that on the console, which had not only more competent graphics, but more competent performance capabilities. This is the first time ever that I saw the holes that were in the Nintendo Switch. Furthermore, Nintendo simply didn't release a ton of games I was interested in 2018. In general, they released the Nintendo Labo, which was cool, but didn't really stick around for very long. Super Mario Party, Bayonetta re-releases, Mario Tennis Aces, Kirby Stars Allies, and an influx of random indie games. I mean, you may like some of the first-party games Nintendo launched in 2018, but this wasn't a very strong year for the Nintendo Switch aside from Fortnite and Super Smash Bros. It wasn't a weak year either, I will admit, they just didn't release stuff that I was super interested in. Finally, Nintendo released a statement that they were not focused on an online voice chat system or a party system that every other console had. I distinctly remember having a conversation in person with my friend who was trying to play Nintendo Switch Fortnite with me. He said, "We don't have to talk over the phone, we can just talk on the Switch." And I was like, actually, we can't. No, we can't talk on the Switch. With both Splatoon 2 and Fortnite being a thing, it seemed very weird to not have a party chat system where you can invite your friends into a party. I mean, this was before everyone used Discord, and Nintendo insisted that you use their janky ass app to do this shit. I mean, look at this. This is actually how you had to run voice chat through your smartphone, bro. Like, it just made no sense. I don't understand. Having just kickstarted a new generation of console, I wanted Nintendo to act like they did. I didn't have much desire in having to deal with an inferior gaming experience on Fortnite to the PS4 version of it. The same went with Minecraft, although I just ended up maining the Switch version of Minecraft anyways. And then I wanted to have a partying system on the Switch, which wasn't gonna happen, let's just be real. With my main game being Fortnite, I primarily played that on the PS4. Before getting into my experience, let's get into what came out for the Switch this year. You had Luigi's Mansion 3, which I personally never played, but I absolutely love this meme right here. There was Mario Kart Tour, which wasn't even a Switch game, but will become important later. It was an ambitious Mario Kart mobile game, which actually became really popular among the general public and those who didn't even own a Switch. There was New Super Mario Bros. Deluxe, which is a port of New Super Mario Bros. U, which caught controversy. This was because they added and removed content, which ended up leaving the port with less overall content than the initial game on the Wii U. The main issue was that they released it at full price, which to this day, it's $60. Yeah, you're tweaking if you thought I was spending $60 on a game I already own. And it's that attitude right there that will be Nintendo's downfall in today's day and age, but we'll get there when we get there. Finally, my personal favorite game that came out this year, Mario Maker 2. This took Mario Maker from the Wii U and added in a generous amount of fun new features. It's basically Mario Maker Return to the Drawing Board, or Mario Maker if the Wii U had the power of an Xbox One or PS4. I had a lot of fun, but the update which made this 10 times more replayable didn't release yet, so again, more on that later. Finally, I played a lot of Minecraft on the Switch, starting up my Mason Games series, which I still have to finish, I'm not gonna lie. This is the official version of Minecraft on the Switch, which was put on the Switch in 2018, but I believe at this point it just fully replaced Nintendo Switch's version of Minecraft. So this year, I primarily played Fortnite, a bit of Mario Maker 2, Breath of the Wild, Splatoon 2, and Minecraft. That being said, something extremely wild and significant occurred in June of this year. At the end of Nintendo's E3 2019, we get this trailer. A fucking sequel to Breath of the Wild exists and is in development. So basically, Nintendo announced the sequel to one of the greatest games of all time. I was absolutely stoked, but what followed will be nothing short of a long story to be told. Overall, not a terribly strong year for the Nintendo Switch in general, but for me, it was pretty good. I was able to get S rank in Splatoon 2 and complete the story mode. Mario Maker 2 dropped, and I completed the Mason Games 2.0, and just before the year ended, I beat the Master Sword Trials DLC from Breath of the Wild. So Fortnite Chapter 2 came out, and for the first time, I really can't stand this fucking video game. I just felt like it was getting too arbitrary, and the amount of time I invested and skill I had didn't reflect my arena rank or win rate. What I mean by arbitrary is I could hit someone for 200 damage with a gold pump, and then under very similar conditions, hit someone for like 115 damage. Like, being a couple of pixels off shouldn't be an 85 damage output difference. One game, I could beam someone with an AR in 2 seconds. Another, I'd missed half my clip despite my aim being consistent. My success in a game was contingent on me, 1, finding good loot in the first place, and 2, someone not just so happening to land in the same location as me. Therefore, I migrated to other games. Nintendo dropped a cryptic image of Splatoon 2 Salmon Run on Twitter, and I ate that shit up and got hella views for it. I literally told y'all that based on that picture we were getting another game, but more on that later. There were rumors of a Nintendo Switch Pro coming out in 2021, but again, more on that later. During this time, the infamous Nintendo Switch stick drift was becoming an issue. Now, I'm not gonna lie, all controllers that I had besides the Wii U and Switch Pro controllers drifted, even my mechanical PC controllers, but the Joy-Cons were different. Personally, I never use mine because them shits act like they have a mind of their own. They basically do with the way they drift. Shit, you would have thought I no-lived Mario Kart. The issue was so bad and so widespread that multiple lawsuits were filed, and it wouldn't be until 2024 that they would be shut down, meaning litigation lasted over 4 years. On a different note, I played a little Breath of the Wild here and there and collected each individual item. But in April, Mario Maker 2 announced its final update. You can make your own world in up to 8 of them and then post them for other people to play. So basically, you can make your own Mario game composed of levels you created. This prompted me to do this right away, as New Super Mario Bros. Wii was a childhood game of mine, and New Super Mario Bros. U was the follow-up to that title, which was still a childhood game of mine. So imagine being able to make your own levels with that style. What really got me hooked were the themes. I made my world similar to NSMBU. My world 1 was the Mushroom Kingdom, world 2 was desert themed, world 3 was snow, 4 was cave themed since they didn't have a beach theme. World 5 was jungle themed, World 6 was cloud themed since they didn't have a mountain theme. World 7 was space themed, which my levels in that world took on nighttime versions of different themes. And of course, World 8 was lava and castle themed. This was anything but easy, however. Aside from Geometry Dash, these levels were the hardest thing I've completed in gaming. World 1 was no cakewalk, World 2 kind of was. World 3 was a bit harder, with the castle being pretty hard and the ghost house being tedious. World 4 was probably my most ambitious world to this point, with the dark theme, the water level, and the upside down puzzle level, the auto-scroll castle, and the 1-minute speedrun level. World 5 was solid in my opinion. World 6 amped up the difficulty a bit with the ghost house, and I feel like I utilized the theme correctly. World 7 is my most ambitious world, with the nighttime desert, snow, and jungle theme levels. The nighttime snow level is the perfect mix of difficulty and gameplay in my opinion, and I was proud of how I handled the 2-path draining acid jungle theme level. Then I made a huge 3D world theme level called Nightfall in Meowser City. Finally, the castle was alright. It wasn't my best though. World 8 was filled with my hardest levels that I didn't get around to beating until 2021. The castle was my most ambitious level, with 8 sections leading to all 7 Koopaling boss fights and then Bowser. The sections take on gimmicks from my previous castle levels, which is why I think it's my most ambitious level. Sorry for the sidetrack, but as you can see, this was a huge W for me. I was completely enthralled by it, and I think this was a super good move from Nintendo. I wish there were more ambitious updates to first-party Nintendo Switch games like this. This year, I obviously played a bit of Fortnite, but by Season 4 of Chapter 2, my passion for it dwindled. I played Modern Warfare 2019 with Wave Clan, I made the Mason Games 3.0 and collaborated with Wave Chicken to make the Mason and Gabriel games. I also started to get more into Splatoon 2, again for a short amount of time. Something big also happened this year. No new Breath of the Wild sequel news. Although I wasn't happy about that, Nintendo did partner with Koei Tecmo to make Age of Calamity, a Hyrule Warriors kind of game that was Breath of the Wild themed. I was hyped for this game. It even offered a story which takes place before the events of Breath of the Wild, although not canonical, and became unserious halfway through. I still think this was a better story told than Breath of the Wild's story though. The gameplay and replayability was actually super good, adding in new enemy types, weapons, bonuses such as meals, playable characters, and over 100 different missions. The main issue with this game was its performance, the frame rate.
Hyrule Warriors on Switch, it drops into single digits. Like, I love the Switch, but it's not performing to the standard that we should be at this point.
Because there is a lot going on in this game, it's almost unplayable at times, and it really highlighted the shortcomings of the Nintendo Switch in terms of power. As for the Nintendo Switch for 2020, it had a pretty good year. A banger for Nintendo dropped, which was Animal Crossing New Horizons. It was the 3rd highest selling game this year, the highest selling exclusive game of the year, and the 2nd highest selling game on the Nintendo Switch, period. Pikmin 3 and Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition got ported. There's also some controversy. Mario 3D All-Stars was a Switch port of 3 legendary Mario games: Super Mario 64, Mario Sunshine, and Super Mario Galaxy. The main issue is that it launched in September and was only available until March of 2021, making artificial demand for the game due to FOMO. Probably the biggest controversy was the hashtag Free Melee, which was trending on Twitter. This was because Nintendo pulled out of the Smash Melee tournament last second. In fact, the biggest one ever. Because of COVID and the need for social distance, a mod was made which emulated the game so it could be played online, and the tournament could keep going in theory. This is in theory because Nintendo sends a cease and desist notice to them in response, shutting down the tournament and putting themselves in hot water. Another controversy they got themselves into was the Joy-Con Boys cease and desist. Etika was a prolific Nintendo fan and content creator who commonly yelled the phrase Joy-Con Boys, which became a group. He unfortunately took himself out due to some underlying mental health issues which went unchecked. In memory of him, a company made a Nintendo Switch Joy-Con in his honor. Nintendo responded to this with a cease and desist notice, preventing the Joy-Cons from releasing to the public. From a legal standpoint, Nintendo was technically in their right to do this. If they were making a decal for the Joy-Cons, I don't think Nintendo could have done anything, but they were making entire Joy-Cons without Nintendo's approval. But considering who Etika was and the situation surrounding Joy-Cons, it was pretty insensitive behavior. Finally, back to the free Melee situation, professional Splatoon 2 players put free Melee in their names, put free Melee on Twitter, and some even backed out of the tournament. In response, Nintendo canceled the broadcasting of the upcoming Splatoon 2 tournament. I'd be lying if I said that these changes hurt Nintendo in the long run, because they didn't, but it did land them in hot water for a little while. Anyways, to wrap up the year, Minecraft releases the Xbox Series X, and Sony releases the PlayStation 5. Which one did I get? Neither. I got something even better. A PC gaming laptop. It's 2021 and I released my first Fortnite Downfall documentary, but honestly, with my new PC, I was still playing the game and actually got a lot better because I was, on a PC. With this fact, however, I found myself playing a lot more Splatoon 2, which slowly transitioned into my main game. In May, I reached X rank and would later complete the Octo expansion. I had a pretty decent year on YouTube here as well, making a series on some old games and even came out with 2 more documentaries. One was my Many Flaws of Splatoon 2 video, taking a deep dive into the flaws in that game. My second one came out on Halloween, which was an even bigger Fortnite documentary than my last, and was my biggest video on the channel for quite some time. As for the happenings of the Nintendo Switch, Mario 3D World was ported over from the Wii U to the Nintendo Switch. It came with the added bonus of Bowser's Fury, which is a mini 3D open world game with Mario pairing up with Bowser Jr. to fight a superpowered Bowser. Although it wasn't enough to make me purchase it, because again, I'm not spending $60 on a game I already own, we've been over this, but it was very highly regarded and overall a good port. Fast forward to June 15th. That was Nintendo's day for E3 of 2021. Nintendo Prime had made a video telling us that a new Mario & Rabbids game was coming out, and so then Nintendo revealed it on the first day of E3, and Cuz would not stop telling us that he told us so, bro. That was just a funny memory that I remember.
This game that I'm about to show you guys for Switch, this thing was part of a giant list I leaked yesterday that everyone told me was fake, and already dozens of games on this list have come true. We got some Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle, a second one. As you can see, this is from the official Nintendo website. It literally does not get more official than this. So for anyone that doubted it, the leaker yesterday got the name right.
More importantly, after a half disappointing Nintendo Direct filled with some bullshit, aside from a Skyward Sword HD port, which I ended up getting,
keep playing with me. I will show up to Nintendo HQ. I
hope
will
you enjoy
do
playing this.
Breath of the Wild 2 finally gets its second trailer.
All right, let's go.
All right, here's the last thing we have to show you.
Let's go.
This is the sequel to The Legend of Zelda
Yes.
Breath of the Wild.
Yes.
And trust, a nigga was locked in at this trailer and was high-key impressed. It seemed like a lot of work had gone into it, and it was shaping up to be an actual huge game. Finally, they dropped a 2022 release date.
I knew that they're gonna put the 2022 up there.
Then something else huge happened, something that I actually took a huge issue with. So just to jog everyone's memories, we had a huge influx of Nintendo Switch Pro leaks around this time. Bloomberg, an actual company, even reported on one coming out. So it was all but confirmed because of the magnitude of the Bloomberg article. Mind you, at this point, it's 2021. With the release of the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X, more expansive and graphically advanced third-party games were releasing. Furthermore, A lot of third-party games came out for the Nintendo Switch, most of which had major shortcomings compared to the versions of same games running on other platforms, whether it be performance or even features that are missing on the Switch version. Then take into consideration that Nintendo's own games can't really run well on its own platform. Mario Maker 2 Online looks like this.
I don't want to exaggerate, so we'll say around 20 seconds from when we could see the screen to when the countdown finished. That was how laggy it was.
I mean, do I really need to say anything? Minecraft, which isn't Nintendo's own game, but still has major draw distance issues. Age of Calamity exists, and now we're talking about Breath of the Wild 2, a sequel to a game which pushed the limits of the console. A lot of us thought in order for the new game to be fully realized, it would probably need a Switch Pro. Nintendo announces the Nintendo Switch OLED, and upon realizing that the only difference were an OLED screen without the bezels, a new kickstand, new speakers, and a built-in Ethernet port on the back of the dock, most of the Nintendo community was disappointed.
After that, everything else is actually exactly the same as the original Switch model.
Now, the general consensus is that the Switch Pro was a real thing at some point in time, but because of COVID creating chip shortages in China, they had to settle with making the Switch OLED. This is the beginning of when I would say the Nintendo Switch is quote-unquote unapologetically underpowered. This is a phrase you'll hear me use a lot more. It wasn't frustrating because it wasn't the Switch Pro, but because Nintendo had major issues with the Switch. Cracks were forming in it, given that its hardware is from 2015. It's basically an innovative and fully supported console that is slightly stronger than an Xbox 360. Cause something needed to be done. And Nintendo just spent a bunch of resources which didn't do that something. A missed opportunity? Possibly, but it's more so the fact that Nintendo seems content with where the Switch is that makes it an even bigger issue. There was some good news though. Mario Party Superstars, which was the better Mario Party game that came out for the Switch, was released. Then Mario Dread, which came out in October, did some numbers. Then you had Game Builder Garage, which was innovative but didn't really do too hot. I remember Mario Golf coming out, which looked fine, but there were some problems people had with it. Oh yeah, Splatoon 3 was announced. To wrap up the year, the main game that I play now is Splatoon 2 instead of Fortnite. With Chapter 3 of Fortnite, it was pretty much over. I mean, I played a little bit because switching to keyboard made me exponentially better, but I probably booted up that game 10 times since Chapter 3's release. It's just made for a new generation of kids. Back when Fortnite came out, it was made for people in their mid-teenage years and younger. In June of 2021, I graduated from high school and was no longer in my mid-teen years or younger. It kind of felt right for this game to no longer appeal to me. On top of that, the aggressive crossovers and monetization ruined any charm the original game and its story had, and actually playing the game isn't all that fun to me. No longer will there be days where I sit and watch FNCS with a Chick-fil-A meal with my name on it, seeing all the popular pros get their placements, trying to see my favorite players climb the ranks in the tournament. Season 6 and Season 7 of Chapter 2 for FNCS, for EU specifically, was peak. Like, everybody was in that bitch. All of the good players, all my favorite players, everybody was in there. I finally finished up the Wave games, which served as the 5th entry in the Mason games. I also believe I purchased Mario and Rabbids around this time, which I actually found extremely fun and put a lot of time into. Although the PvP mode is on some bullshit and handed Wave Chicken this win right here.
See, bro, when I was 1v1ing Gabriel, I bumped into him and his shield was still up.
Bro, there's no way the nigga still has this shield. In every fucking story mode, if you get hit, then the shield is gone. Oh, now the shield is gone. Okay.
I think it's a skill issue.
Anyways, me quitting Fortnite was probably the biggest factor into what made me play the Switch so much for the next couple of years. So this is the year where Nintendo was on my radar the most. Not only was Splatoon 3 coming out, but also Breath of the Wild 2. In January, I got Quad X rank, meaning X rank in every multiplayer mode. This means that I got 100% of the game per my own definition, because I got the highest rank in all multiplayer modes, actually 100% in both Octo Expansion and the single player, and got Hazard level max in Salmon Run. February 9th was the date of Nintendo's newest Direct. We got the announcement of Nintendo Switch Sports, which I already knew was going to be ass when I saw the Mii's, and the fact that we aren't playing it in Woohoo Island. We get some Splatoon 3 Salmon Run information, and then for the finale, we get it. With the hype being at an all-time high, we get a Xenoblade Chronicles 3 reveal. Nigga, no! I wanted to see Breath of the Wild 2! Let me skip Breath of the Wild 2. I'm ready. I'm ready.
In Mario, this next segment will be our last announcement.
Hey, yo, what the fuck?
Fighting in order to live, and living to fight.
I saw this coming.
Boy, ain't no fucking way, boy. Boy, ain't no way, boy. Boy, ain't no way, boy.
I don't give a fuck about a new Xenoblade Chronicles game. I don't care about a new Xenoblade game. I don't care. Give me Breath of the Wild 2. Y'all better have something. Y'all better have something. Y'all better control. I don't care about Xenoblade. I don't care about Xenoblade Chronicles. They weren't lying. Oh my god. There was no mention of Breath of the Wild 2. And by the way, I'm telling you guys, it may not seem so bad, but bro, with all the speculations, the leaks, analyzing footage of the past trailers, and the fact that the game was revealed in 2019, we were blue-balled at this point. It was just such a letdown with your excitement being so high, and leaks telling you a trailer is going to be in the next Nintendo Direct, just to get no mention of it at all. At this point, it's just more Splatoon 2, and I got a new editor on my PC, which made me make better videos. Breath of the Wild 2 gets delayed to 2023 via an update trailer, which dropped in late March. I remember coming out of class and seeing it, and honestly, I was alright with the pushback. Halfway through the year, I made this one video, ripping Nintendo apart for selective incompetence. My main points were the OLED didn't elevate the integrity of the Nintendo Switch. However, come the summer of this year, another wave of Nintendo Switch Pro leaks came out. Nintendo did not have a June Direct this year, and E3 2022 was cancelled, so the lack of news was getting to fans. On top of that, investors directly asked Nintendo President Shintaro Furukawa about its existence, to which he gave a "we can't disclose information about future hardware" ass response. Nintendo then privates their Switch OLED reveal trailer. Nintendo usually does this right before uploading a video on new hardware, so the search terms don't take traffic away from the new video. All the arrows were pointing towards new hardware coming out. I woke up and saw a Splatoon 3 Nintendo Switch OLED announcement direct trailer. Imagine my and several others' disappointment. However, it was kind of our faults for following the leaks so heavily on this one, before actual companies were reporting on it, but this was a bit of a stretch. Anyways, in my video, I highlighted how this didn't need to be a whole trailer and how this is useless as it doesn't come with the game.
First of all, why is there a whole ass trailer for this bro? And then are like, oh, the gradient looks good. I don't give a about the gradient, okay? It is coming August 26th or whatever the or in August of this year. Splatoon 3 is releasing in September of this year. The console dedicated to Splatoon 3 isn't even going to have Splatoon 3 on it. It's sold separately. How stupid? Dude, what is the point of this? What is this? The stupidest thing about this trailer, too, besides the fact that it even exists, is the fact that I'm hearing like Splatoon 3 actual gameplay in the background of the video. Why am I hearing Squid saying this way? I'm hearing a E-liter charge up. I'm hearing squids swimming through ink. What is this? There's no gameplay in this trailer. Why am I hearing gameplay in the background, bro? Who the edited this video. You need to get fired, bro. No, you need to get slapped the shit out of, actually.
The other point I was making in this video was hammering home the lack of performance. I mean, I'll just let you hear it.
You know, Nintendo has some good online titles. No, they don't. No online title. Like, Nintendo Switch Online is just ass. There's no game that utilizes Nintendo Switch Online pretty good. What, you're going to pull Splatoon 2 and Mario Kart 8 Deluxe out of your ass, aren't you? Okay. Splatoon 2? If you don't know what shitty hit detection is, go play Splatoon 2. If you don't know what bad tick rate is, go play Splatoon 2. Splatoon 2 is a video game that will kick you off of its servers and will blame your internet for it.
My nigga. Nice! Nice! Amazing! Amazing!
I'm not even lying. And this is on top of having wired internet connection.
In late August, I go away to college. Yes, I took an extra year after high school. Actually, the same day that bitch-ass Splatoon OLED dropped was the day that I went away to school. I dropped my final Splatoon 3 highlights video, my BAKUGAN documentary, and basically stopped playing Splatoon 2. It felt really weird with my new college setup anyways. I patiently waited 2 weeks, and on September 9th, I watched Season 5 of Cobra Kai. I'm just playing. Well, I mean, I did, but obviously I got my ass on Splatoon 3 and literally played for 12 hours. I've literally only gone back to Splatoon 2 once since then. The wait was finally over, and the fact that I was playing this game, performing squid rolls and shit was surreal. Mind you, I would literally have dreams about playing this game before it was even announced. In my dream, we had red ink and a free-for-all mode, which obviously we didn't get that in real life. But hey, a nigga was dreaming. But Splatoon 3 was actually insane, as you could guess. This would turn into my new main video game that I played. A few days later, a trailer drops. That's right. It's a new Breath of the Wild 2 trailer, which finally gives us the official name of the game, Tears of the Kingdom. This, along with an accurate release date, May 12th, 2023. So here I am, playing a lot of Splatoon 3, getting used to college, falling for girls, and all that good shit. Splatoon 3 came in the form of seasonal updates, so at the end of each season, I would come out with a montage of highlights that I got in said season, kind of like what I did with Fortnite. I hate to get all emotional, but you know when you leave someone, miss them, and then find someone else that you click with a little bit better, and you do the same things with person number 2, but it just feels better? That's how I felt with Splatoon 3 and Fortnite. I could now take the game just as seriously as I did Fortnite and post the same kind of content, but I was having so much more fun doing so. Blood, I was really out here having emotional withdrawals from video games. It sounds weird, but I think all gamers go through it, to be honest. But you know, my black ass couldn't stop going crazy with the Nintendo discussion videos. In December, I dropped yet another Nintendo Switch video titled An Important Nintendo Switch Discussion, Unapologetically Underpowered. This is where I went in depth about how I believe Nintendo was slacking in a lot of areas. This is because a popular Nintendo YouTuber, by the way, RGT85, if you know, you know, made a video titled It's Time to Be Honest while holding up the Nintendo Switch in the thumbnail. The gist of that video was RGT saying that the Switch needs a revision, more holes are being poked in the Switch, and at this time, the Switch was being outsold in monthly sales by both the PS5 and Xbox Series, which didn't hold up for too long. But in the spirit of RGT, let's be honest, that's because of the PS5 and Xbox Series fucking off. There are like 2 exclusive PS5 games, and the series is just, it's an Xbox. I mean, just get a PC and you have an Xbox and so much more. Xbox is trash and you guys just need to wake up. I'm kidding. But I do think that the Xbox has the least value of any gaming system that you can buy. Just my personal opinion. In my video, I continue to hone in on the fact that there is a lack of proper online infrastructure for the Nintendo Switch, a lack of proper performance for video games, making the Switch a unique, maybe more convenient, but factually inferior way to play games as far as actually running them goes. So many compromises and cutbacks are made for third-party and even first-party games that appear on the Switch in the hopes that it'll run somewhat smoothly on the outdated hardware. I even brought up input delay, and as we all know, Joy-Con drift was/is a huge issue. A huge controversy was Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. Now this game was supposed to be this shit. I'm gonna tell you a little story. Over the summer, this GameStop employee was yapping about how it was gonna be the biggest and best Pokemon game ever. He was yapping so much that he forgot to put my friend's game disc in his case. So we get back to the crib and see that the bitch was empty. Bro, I could not stop dying. And the GameStop that we got it from was in a mall 2 hours away from our vacation house. So it was not like we were going back. He just had to take the L. Anyways, cuz did all that yapping just for the game to be ass with vicious frame drops and screen tearing. Now the blame was mostly on the developers, but would that shit have slid on the PS4? Would that shit have slid on the Xbox One or the Series X? Only when games are too large and ambitious, like Cyberpunk. But this is Pokemon. I have a sneaking suspicion that the Switch was part of the reason why the game was poorly optimized. Anyways, 2022 wasn't bad for the Switch in terms of games. We had Splatoon 3, Bayonetta 3, Mario & Rabbids Sparks of Hope, Kirby and the Forgotten Land, Xenoblade Chronicles 3, Nintendo Switch Sports, Pokemon Legends Arceus, and that shitty one that dropped in November. Finally, in December, after 8 years, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe gets new content with its booster pass courses dropping new tracks incrementally. This introduced 4 new courses every couple of months, most of which were returning and updated fan favorites. Others were from Mario Kart Tour. Remember the mobile game? So just to summarize, my problem with the Switch at this point is that it was made for 2017. The Wii U lost Nintendo a lot of their financials, but they worked with what they had and made a unique console. However, this console was made in 2017 with 2015 hardware, and by 2022, it showed. So maybe the issues were there since the start. But in a new day and age, the things that used to be acceptable just aren't. It's like a person growing up. If you wet the bed when you're like 5, it's much different than doing it at 15. Yelling and screaming when something doesn't go your way is understandable at the age of 2. But when you're 20, people are going to look at you like you're insane or just haven't been raised properly. And I think that's a perfect analog to what I think happened with the Switch. It wasn't being raised properly, enough to get by, but its flaws certainly showed. The general consensus is that 2023 will probably be the last year of the Switch before a new console is released. I start off the year with a bang, dropping a Tears of the Kingdom speculation video and it blowing up. It's finally what got me to 1,000 subscribers, and Hyrule Gamer even commented on the video. I leaned into this a lot more by making more Tears of the Kingdom speculation videos. This builds up my own hype for the game even more while still playing a lot of Splatoon 3. After a couple of months that went by after patiently waiting, I replayed Breath of the Wild and made a huge goodbye Breath of the Wild video, which dropped on May 11th. May 12th came, and I spent a total of 24 hours live streaming Tears of the Kingdom to YouTube. It was and probably will remain to be the most hyped I have ever been for a video game to come out. And I'm super glad I got to experience being that excited for a game. Tears of the Kingdom is probably objectively the best game we have available, and it'll probably stay that way until GTA 6 comes out. It doesn't give off the same vibes as Breath of the Wild because, let's be real, it'll be almost impossible to recreate that game's atmosphere, but it's basically a better version of Breath of the Wild, making that game somehow feel empty. Instead of a new world, you have new systems such as Ultra Hand, Auto Build, Recall, Fuse, and Ascend. All of these abilities are game changers. Ultra Hand allows you to build almost anything you want out of the materials of the world. Fuse allows you to combine weapons or weapons with objects and or materials to increase their damage or to change their properties. For instance, you can now fuse a bomb to a shield, and when you shield surf, the bomb explodes, sending you flying up into the air. This can damage enemies and give you a height advantage. Look at how creative this game lets you get.
Yeah.
Recall reverses the trajectory of a given object, and Ascend allows you to travel through the bottom of solid matter and ascend to the top of it. The fact that this game even ran on the Switch relatively smoothly was called black magic by several and even other game developers. This is also because on top of the new abilities, the world got several new additions, such as the Sky Islands, as well as the Underground Depths, which was just as big as the overworld, although obviously had less going on. Furthermore, a lot of changes were made. The shrines were better, and so were the dungeons and boss fights. The combat was definitely an improvement, and so were the side quests. Aside from that, everything that made Breath of the Wild stand out was also in Tears of the Kingdom. The temperature systems, the cooking systems, the search for gear, the unlocking of towers, etc. Also, there were some cool things you could do, which Breath of the Wild players would only be able to dream of being able to do. This would include joining the Yiga clan and being able to walk around in Gerudo Town without dressing up as a Vi. Now, why didn't this game get the recognition it deserved? I mean, it did, but only up to a certain point. It lost Game of the Year to Baldur's Gate. And I'm not saying the game is overrated, but it was definitely glazed. And when comparing Tears of the Kingdom to Baldur's Gate, people seem to forget something called scale. For instance, you could say the boss fights in Baldur's Gate are better than in Tears of the Kingdom, but Tears of the Kingdom is an open world game while Baldur's Gate is a top-down RPG. So you can get away with a lot more design-wise. Don't get it fucked up. Baldur's Gate 3 seems to be a super strong game, but Tears of the Kingdom is on a whole different level of gaming, and I humbly thought it deserved more recognition as far as the mainstream is concerned. Speaking of which, I found it kind of odd that a lot of Zelda fans didn't like Tears of the Kingdom and actually said Baldur's Gate 3 was the better game. So I did a little digging. I might make a separate video on this in the future, but Zelda fans didn't appreciate Tears of the Kingdom for a myriad of reasons. I'm hearing a lot of, it's a good game, but bad sequel. It's the new Zelda formula, which isn't like the old one. There was nothing wrong with linear style games. Tears of the Kingdom makes playing Breath of the Wild pointless, etc, etc, etc. Many people just need to stop whining. I think the main culprit is the story not being strong and having the same setup as Breath of the Wild, given how you unlock it backwards. However, a decent chunk of it happens in present time, unlike Breath of the Wild, where most of the exposition is unlocked via memories. I also think that the world being reused was part of the reason people feel this way. People who say that the dungeons and the shrines and the combat are basically identical to Breath of the Wild needs to put down the crack pipe. They are being very uncharitable, but I'll save this topic for a different video. The main takeaway is that this is one of the best video games ever dropped, but went very much unappreciated. Some of the reasons for which are valid. A lot, though, aren't when looking at the sheer quality of the game. I personally had so much fun with this game, and although didn't play it nearly as much as I did Breath of the Wild, how it enhances the Breath of the Wild game is remarkable. I personally can't believe this game is on the Switch, and I think this is Nintendo's best Switch game. Okay, so Tears of the Kingdom dropped. What else? Metroid Prime Remastered released as well. Also, Pikmin 4. So these are already just two huge titles for Nintendo fans. The last Pikmin game that released was over 10 years ago on the Wii U, and Metroid Prime launched in 2002. That's slightly before I was even fucking born. Old ass, unk ass game. If you're calling me young for playing that game when it came out, cause you're at least 35, you need to stop it. There were some other games that came up. I can't believe I called that shit an unk-ass game. Yo, what was I on when I wrote that? There are, of course, some other new games that came out this year, but the last big one was Super Mario Wonder, a new Mario series which takes the core game trope of New Super Mario Bros. And turns it on its head. It was so fun being able to explore these new worlds, with Mario having these new abilities in the form of badges. There were also creative new inclusions and mechanics, which made for new dynamics in levels, and clever ways of solving puzzles and or completing levels. Yeah, this is a really good fucking game, to be honest, and even was a nominee for Game of the Year. This means that this is Nintendo's second time during the Switch era having 2 first-party games nominated for Game of the Year. After I beat Tears of the Kingdom, I was kind of content with the Switch. I waited patiently for 4 years for a game and finally got it. I now wasn't really in the mood for more. I wasn't checking for when the next console would drop or new games that would drop for the Switch because I was satisfied. It was like the Switch era finally came full circle with everything it tried to do, Tears of the Kingdom being the peak of the Nintendo Switch's accomplishments. I would continue to post Splatoon 3 content on YouTube, but there was a problem. There wasn't really any engagement with my videos. I would post live cutcom videos, impressive gameplay videos, and montages at the end of each season. All of these would get less views and engagement than a 30-second clip ripped directly off of someone's Switch, showing off the new Splatoon 3 fist bump emote. I was actually offended, but I was still enjoying playing the game, relatively. During the summer of 2023, right after beating Tears of the Kingdom, I returned to an old game that I used to play, Geometry Dash, and started to take it seriously. Before long, I found being good at Geometry Dash a lot more satisfying and fulfilling than being good at Splatoon 3, and would gear my content towards Geometry Dash. However, I would still play Splatoon 3 in the background. So all in all, 2023 was an amazing year for the Switch, but most of us thought it would be its last. I mean, go out with a bang, why don't you? Tears of the Kingdom finally released, and we had great games that touched the Switch this year. And then the Mario Kart 8 Deluxe Booster Course was finished releasing new content. I mean, at this point, in my perspective at least, there was now nothing new or nothing else to be expected besides Metroid Prime 4, which everyone thought was going to come out on the next console at this point anyways. I think I'll start off with my experience with gaming for this year, as I'm sure it'll be more entertaining than telling you about what was put out for the Switch for 2024. For reference, this is the first year that I didn't purchase anything on the Switch. More on that soon. So from January to April, I'm posting straight Geometry Dash videos. But don't get it fucked up, I have something crazy in the works. On April 13th, I dropped my biggest video ever, even bigger than the Fortnite documentary. And that was my Splatoon 3 documentary, if you will, titled The Many Flaws of Splatoon 3. In extreme summary, I went over the fact that one of my favorite games is an extremely ambitious title that gets held back by Nintendo's complacent behavior. The matchmaking is absolutely horrendous, with what is obviously performance-based matchmaking in Anarchy and not enough skill division in X rank, to the point where 1800 X power is the norm. For reference, that's a rank, by the way, that would get you kicked out of X rank in Splatoon 2. The tick rate is awful and interrupts gameplay oftentimes. The online optimization is an oxymoron, and the media presence is non-existent, which is probably why my videos on Splatoon 3 got little views. For instance, competitive is 90% community driven with no official broadcasting or event hosts. It's just watch this streamer play against kids in Shendo queue or against a party of pros. And I don't even know if there is such thing as professional Splatoon 3 anymore. People had their teams and whatnot, but these are just friend groups and not official organizations like you see with other games. I even use the awful game Fortnite as an example in how they do this 100 times better than Nintendo. My thing is, if you want to make a multiplayer game of this caliber that it gets multiplayer game of the year in 2022, then there are certain things you need to do that Nintendo just isn't doing. I do like how the game is pure developer passion instead of soulless greed you see out of games like Call of Duty or the lack of identity with Fortnite, but those same games still do things community-wise way better than Nintendo and Splatoon 3, which in my opinion severely holds back the potential community surrounding Splatoon 3 that could have been built. I think the fact that this is a 2.5 hour high quality Splatoon 3 video with a good thumbnail and tags, and probably had more work go into it than 95% of the other Splatoon videos that exist on the internet, and it only gets 450 views says something. I even rated it #1 in my top 10 most underrated videos, so sorry for spoiling that video if you planned on watching it at any point in time. It's after this point that I stopped playing Splatoon 3 as much, so around season 7 of the game, and mainly focus on Geometry Dash. And to be honest, this is kind of where my Switch arc ends. This year for Nintendo was pretty lackluster, and it was obvious that they are stalling or just trying to milk the Nintendo Switch. Most of the games released for this year were either announced in late 2023 or in 2024, and none of these games were of the scale Switch games released in prior years. So as to say, none of them were AAA games, which is why I arrived at the conclusion that Nintendo was stalling. What's worse, however, was the fact that we get no update on a new console this year. Just a reminder, we're working with hardware made in 2015, released in 2017. By 2021, a lot of the community has voiced their opinions, and it's pretty widely known and accepted that the Switch is underpowered. Not underpowered in the sense that, oh, the games run at 30 FPS instead of 60 FPS, and I don't have a problem with that. Underpowered in the sense that a lot of games do not run correctly or competently on the Nintendo Switch, which lowers the game experience solely because it's on the Nintendo Switch. In 2021, Nintendo had the opportunity to create a mid-generation upgrade like the PS4 and the PS5 Pro to the PS4 and the PS5. It's clear that they wanted to and needed to based on articles from reputable companies and even investors asking them about a potential Switch Pro. The whole time, Nintendo was cooking up a Switch OLED. Wow. So a missed opportunity. So we roughed this out for another 2 years, and in 2023, it seems like the Switch era is coming to an end. Psych! Because 2024 rolls around with a bunch of bullshit ass games that do nothing to push the Switch or any pre-established franchise on the Switch. Then there was no talk of a new Nintendo console. I think RGT85's video posted at the end of 2024 was a perfect way to encapsulate the situation.
Nintendo, it's time to wake up, buddy. It is time to wake up and stop dicking around, because 2025 is pretty much here. In 2024, I'm not going to say it was a bad year for the company, but I will say it was a safe year for the company. Very safe games released for the Nintendo Switch. Remakes, remasters, games that had smaller budgets that don't need to sell millions and millions of copies. Some quality titles mixed in there. Some games, maybe not so much. And the Switch, you know, great system, great life cycle. Maybe a little bit too long, but the technology within the Switch, the games that come out for the Switch, they're obviously a bit of a step behind with some of the newer games that are coming out. A lot of third-party entries are now missing out on the Nintendo platforms because of how old the Nintendo Switch is. And I'm not saying that third parties are, you know, essential for a Nintendo platform, because realistically, I mean, they haven't been since, what, the Super Nintendo, back when you could get all the Squaresoft games on there. But you want to have some of the bigger titles come to the platform. And that, of course, is where the big elephant in the room comes into play, the Nintendo Switch 2.
So the year starts off with a bunch of leaks, none of which I cared about until the Genki leaks came out. Is it Genki or Genki? By early January, there was a whole video on the Nintendo Switch 2 in hand. This video showed off the functionality of the new Joy-Cons, the new controller handle, and more footage. It was basically all but revealed, and it serves Nintendo right. Nintendo, you have shown no interest in faithfully updating your underpowered console for almost 4 years, and when you did, you shit the bed. Furthermore, you haven't been transparent with fans, the community, shareholders, or investors for no particular reason. So yeah, I'm glad it got leaked. It was literally officially revealed before Nintendo could reveal it. In April, we finally get more information. Let's just say Nintendo revealed the best console ever, and then they gave us very good reasons not to buy it. More on that in a later video, maybe. To the Nintendo Switch, I have to say thank you, but good riddance. You provided a lot of experiences that I will never forget, and elevated my gaming experience in a way no other console has. Actually, you changed my life, believe it or not, and restored the faith and competence of the company which produces the best video games in the industry, in my honest opinion. You brought a lot of unforgettable games into fruition and rightfully became one of the most successful consoles in existence. At the same time, you came into the game underpowered and you overstayed your welcome. You struggle to competently run games made specifically for you. Your makers are stuck in the past in terms of how to approach online and cater to a community older than 18 years old. Your success made your makers complacent with the underpowered state you were in, your horrible issues with Joy-Con drift, and we, as a consumer base, suffered in certain instances. Despite you being mostly good and probably the best console released in the past 2 generations, it's time for you to go. I waited until the Nintendo Switch 2's reveal to finish this part of the script, and I must say, it was worth the wait. The console looks very competent, being able to run games in 4K 60 FPS or 1080p 120 FPS. It has voice chat, a slew of new features, such as being able to use the Joy-Cons as a mouse, select remastered games, a speaker system, improved storage, being able to transfer save data from Switch 1. It's all around just a better Nintendo Switch. And with third-party developers seemingly jumping at the opportunity to put their games on the Switch, I think it has the potential to control the gaming industry for the next 2 years. Thus, this ends the long journey of the Nintendo Switch.